Good morning, Year 10, and welcome back. Welcome to the poetry module. We've got 15 poems to go through and learn, beginning with a song, the one we're going to look at today. But before we go on, I want you to do this do now. In your opinion, is the statement opposite true or false? The statement being, absence makes the heart grow fonder. That simply means, Gloria, if you're apart from someone you love, does it mean that you end up loving them more? That's all that absence means. Just write a little paragraph explaining your thoughts on that, and then move on to the next slide. I'll give you 5 minutes to do that. Okay, our learning objectives today is to begin the poetry module and to analyse the first of the 15 poems that we're going to be looking at, and that's called A Song by Helen Maria Williams. So don't bother with the learning objective as usual, as in don't bother writing it in. The title is A Song by Helen Maria Williams. Write that into your books. Okay, so you've got the title in your exercise books there, A Song by Helen Maria Williams. And I've attached a copy of the poem which I want you to stick into your books as well. We're going to be annotating this, so I've attached a copy. I want you to stick it into your books, and we're going to be annotating it today, so make sure you do that because we're going to need this when you get back to build on. If these lessons are super challenging for you, which they may be because you know, it's poetry, something you probably haven't done a lot of before, just follow what I'm saying, get the work into your books, and we can build on that when we get back. Okay, so just don't give up. If you don't possibly understand something, just do as I tell you, and we can build on that when we get back. We've done this with an Inspector Calls, and we've done it with Jekyll and Hyde. We can do it with the poetry. Also, as we're going along, if there are any issues, my email is on class charts there, and just so you know, these lessons are on YouTube now as well. I've put the link on class charts. So keep the faith, keep going forward, and we can build on what we do now when we get back. For this lesson, you're going to need a printout of the poem that you can annotate, which I've sent you. I've attached rather a copy to class charts. A pencil for your first thoughts and ideas when you're annotating. You might want to rub them out and so on, so do it in pencil. And you need some different coloured pens and highlighters. So before you go on, make sure you've got all those. What can we work out from the title, A Song? Always pay close attention to the title. Everything in poetry has been thought about a great deal, all the punctuation, all the words, everything, including the title. And it's easy not to look at that, you know, or just to sort of forget it in the general rush, but it's always important. So what do you think the connotations or the meaning might be behind calling this poem a song? Do you think that it could have words that put to music? Do you think it's an emotional display of feeling? Do you think it could be an uplifting expression of feeling? Songs nearly always are. Could it be a love song of some type? And what do you expect this poem to be about? Do you think it could be a song written to someone about how the speaker is feeling, romance? This isn't a test. We're just having ideas about what it might be about. So when I ask you these questions, get the idea out of your head that I'm somehow testing you. I know that's difficult because we normally are, but just give it some thought. So there's my thoughts on that. Just getting you into the idea of thinking about things like the title and the poem and what might it be about. You're going to have faith in your judgment. Now, give yourself time to read over the poem a couple of times, getting to grips with its content, what it's about. I'm sure you've got some thoughts now on what it would be about. If we were in the classroom, I'd be taking feedback from you. So what do you think this is about? What's going on? What's the story that this poem is telling us? And as with Shakespeare and well, Jekyll and Hyde that we've done, you don't have to understand every single word to know what's going on, or to know enough about what's going on. Certainly at this point, you're just trying to get a feel for the poem. So what is the mood of the poem? Who is speaking? Who are they speaking to? How do they feel? Now, the mood of this poem is it's a woman, I'm guessing, not guessing, it's a woman, writing about her husband, boyfriend, lover, who goes off to sea to make to try and get money. This was written in the late 18th century, when Britain was at the height of its sea power, so people used to go off to sea to try and make their fortunes. So this woman's lover has gone off to sea to try and make fortune, but she's very much in love with him, and she would rather he just stayed at home. We'll unpick the language and structure that leads to that in a bit. So the mood of the poem is sentimental at first, but then in the last three stanzas being like verses, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 verses, but we call them stanzas in poetry. The first three stanzas, it's quite sentimental. The last three, it's quite she's getting quite sort of frustrated and annoyed. Right in the back of your book, I want you to put we're going to have a vocabulary list, a list of poetic terms. So at the back there, write stanza, and that is just verses in poetry. So who is speaking? This is a woman whose love has gone to sea. Who are they speaking to? Well, they're really speaking to anybody who's in the same situation. At this time, a lot of women would be in this position. So she's really talking to anyone who's in the same position. And as I said, how she feels is by the end, but at the beginning, she's quite sentimental and talking about her lover in quite a sentimental, loving way. But by the end, she's getting quite frustrated and annoyed that he's not there. Don't write anything down yet. We're going to annotate the poem a little bit later. These are all just our first thoughts on the poem. And Year 10, really, you're going to have to go back over this lesson a couple of times to get a proper grip on this, but it's well worth spending the time. Once you crack poetry, it's actually quite easy and also very enjoyable. And this is our first one. Nevertheless, there you go. Have a think about that, and then we'll go on to the next slide. So after our first reading, I can give you a little bit of context here. You don't need to know context for the exam, but it does help sometimes to help understanding. Helen Maria Williams, who is the poet, her poem was written at the height of Britain's sea power and appears to describe a seaman, perhaps even a sea captain. So it's the late 18th century, when the British Empire was at its height and we were storming all over the world in our ships, pretty much taking everything. So people could go out on ships to far-flung parts of the world and come back with treasure chests full of money. So it's a good way for a young man to make a fortune, and that's what's happened. Her lover, boyfriend has gone off, and he's doing that. A song, this poem, suggests that love brings the speaker both joy and pain, as her lover seeks to explore the world in order to find material symbols of his love and to gain great wealth. As we've already discussed towards the end of the poem, this leads to the speaker's misery, as she is left alone as a result. And when people went off on these voyages, they would be gone for years. You know, it wasn't just the Isle of Wight ferry. They'd be gone for 5 and 10 years. And you had no way of knowing if they were coming back because there was no communication. So you just had to wait. Okay, now, excuse me, you understand the speaker's situation, the poet's situation, and the tone of the poem. You need to read through it again, this time with your pencil in your hand, ready to annotate your ideas. Annotate means you're writing on the copy of the poem that I sent you. So what can you pick out about how those feelings are presented? Those feelings we decided, didn't we, Year 10, that in the first three stanzas, the first three verses, stanzas, she's all talking about love and how much she misses her lover, and in the last three she's starting to get frustrated and even a little bit angry with the fact that he's not there. So find a quote in the first three stanzas that shows that she's very much in love with her lover, and find a quote in the second three stanzas that shows that she's becoming frustrated, and write it into your book. Underline it on the poem and write she's feeling angry or she's feeling sentimental next to the poem. And we all know on this second reading, don't forget to comment on form and structure as well as the language used. Form and structure is simply the punctuation, and like every stanza is 4 lines long. It's got a very straightforward rhyme scheme, A, B, A, B. We'll go over that later. It's a ballad. It's meant to be sung. So you need to comment on the language and structure. So find one piece of language that shows that she is in love with her lover, and one piece of structure that shows that. It could be a question mark. It could be a comma that emphasizes a clause, anything like that. Just one piece of language and one piece of structure that shows that she's in love with her lover, and one piece of language and one piece of structure that shows that she's frustrated and angry in the second half. And then look at each stanza, and next to each one I want you to write an adjective that sums up the mood of that stanza. So stanza number 1 would be love, and stanza number 6 by the end would be frustration. So go through and just sum up each stanza with an adjective. Well, congratulations, Year 10. You've just begun annotating your first poem, and it doesn't matter if it's not making a great deal of sense to you at the moment. It's like all these things I've always said. It's skills. We keep doing it, we get better at it, and then eventually you'll smash it like you always do everything that we do. But this time I'm going to take you through the poem, mentioning key details that you can annotate. So I want you to add what we're going to do now to your poem. So I imagine, well, you'll definitely have to stop the video or the PowerPoint, depending on how you're looking at this, and annotate your poem. So this is the third reading, and I want you to add in pen, in coloured pen and highlighters, my ideas, add them to yours. Right, now I want you to write these two boxes into your books. You may not understand every aspect of it, but write them into your books. While you're doing that, I shall read them out and explain what it is that they mean. So this is our third reading. We're looking at form and structure. All structure being what? It is punctuation, the stanzas, and so on. We're going to learn some terminology now, which you're going to add to the vocabulary list at the back of your books. Or maybe, yeah, no, at the back of your books. So almost every line is end stopped. All that means is that it's got punctuation at the end of every line. So end stopped, that's a piece of poetic language that you can add to the vocabulary list at the back of your books. The use of punctuation throughout could symbolise the uncertainty that the speaker experiences as she waits for her lover to return. Punctuation sort of breaks things up, doesn't it? So it's showing uncertainty. She's waiting for her chap who's at sea to return. The first two stanzas describe the positive attributes of her lover, but the conjunction but, that's where the poem turns, at the start of stanza 3 indicates a contrast and turning point for the ballad. It descends then into worry and upset from the initial sentimental tone. So that third stanza, particularly the conjunction but, is where the poem turns and she becomes more worried and upset. Like many traditional poems, this is a poem from quite a long time ago, this is in quatrains. Quatrains simply means 4-line stanzas. Quad, you know, it's from 4. So quatrains, 4-line stanzas, and uses a regular rhyme scheme, A, B, in this case. Don't worry about that for now. We'll go into that in more detail another time. So 4-line stanzas are quatrains. Put that into your vocabulary list at the back of your books. And rhyme scheme, put that into the back of your books. Now it's written in a very regular rhyme scheme, A, B, because it's a ballad, ballads would be sung in taverns. People would sit and sing ballads. Most people, or a lot of people, were illiterate, so stories and things got passed around by people singing ballads. And that's how poetry was kind of invented, and why it has the rhythm and the rhyme and the meter that it has is so that it can be remembered. Much like when you listen to pop songs, you can remember the lyrics straight away, can't you, almost? It's because of the rhythm. So people would sing these in taverns and everyone would listen, and then somebody else would go off and sing it elsewhere, so they'd get passed around by like that. So this is a common situation this person's in, this woman. Lots of men went off to sea in search of their fortune, and she's sharing that with other people in the same position. So write those both into your books, and then we'll move on. Okay, Year 10. Now, if you've struggled with the annotations that I've asked you to do up to now, or I'm sure you've done them, or you don't feel particularly confident about them, which is exactly as it should be at this stage, I just hope you've given them a go, that's all. I'm now going to go through the poem and annotate it, and you are going to listen to me, and you're going to copy in the annotations that I give you into your book. So I'll walk you through the poem with the annotations on this slide, and then you'll have to stop the PowerPoint or the video, depending on how you're watching this, and make sure you get these annotations into your books with the arrows pointing to the various parts that I'm talking about. So the first stanza introduces a sentimental tone. That simply means like a kind of loving tone. Scanty is just an old-time word for poor. But the use of, so he's poor, her lover is poor, but the use of metaphor shows that their love is unconditional. She says, he gave me all his heart. He didn't obviously literally give her his heart, it's a metaphor, so that shows how powerful their love was. So all is good in the first stanza, but he's poor, but she doesn't mind. Then the speaker suggests that her lover's value and worth is not monetary, so she means more to him than money, which contrasts with her lover's view that he needs to gain riches. There's another term here, semantic field, which you can put in the back of your book. All that means is that if you can imagine a field, well, it's just words that are close together that create a tone. So worth, value, and riches are all to do with money, aren't they? So that's a semantic field. Those words, value, worth, and riches, create a semantic field. A lot of information, I know, Year 10, but persevere with it and put semantic field into the back of your books. And the definition of semantic field is words that create a tone. Right, the use of sibilants, that's another word that can go into the back of your book. Sibilants there, look. And what that means is it's like alliteration, but with S's. Soul sincere. Slithery snake, sad sack, you know, those are all sibilants. So the use of sibilants, put that into the back of your books, and that is two or more words that begin with an S in a row. That's a definition. Suggests that her lover is genuine. So that technique of sibilants has been used to show that her lover is genuine. He just wants to make her happy. He doesn't realise that she already is. There is a conflict in the sense that the speaker is happy to just be loved, but he perhaps misinterprets this. He perhaps thinks that she wants him to go off and make money, and she can't get through to him that she's quite happy with him just at home. The conjunction is words like but and so on. This is where is the turning point of this ballad. This emphasises a change in tone from the first two stanzas. But now for me in search of gain, from shore to shore he flies, why wander riches to obtain when love is all I prize? So why go away getting all this money when I'm just quite happy to have you here? Bliss, back there, and when I ask for bliss on earth, has connotations of extreme happiness. That's what it means. It suggests that the speaker is content just to be loved when love is all I prize. She doesn't she'd rather he just stayed. She's not interested in the money, she's interested in him. Shore to shore suggests he travels a great distance overseas to obtain these goods. This builds frustrations as they are parted for a long time. The speaker feels responsible for me. Because she feels that he's going away because of her, so she kind of feels it's her fault. He goes away for me, he's gone for me. I couldn't convince him that it was enough for him to be here. He's gone away for me, and now he's risking his life off at sea for years. Right, the third stanza finishes with a question. The speaker emphasises her frustration here. She asks, why? when she doesn't want him to leave. Why is she going? She didn't ask him to do this. For some reason he feels the need to do this. Okay, make sure you're writing these annotations onto your poem that you've stuck into your book. We can build on this when we get back, but you really need to make sure you copy in everything that I'm showing you here. It's going to be very difficult if we have to start from the beginning, year 10, so make sure you do that. I know you are, but it's difficult when you're not right in front of me to keep on top of things, perhaps. Right, so here we are. This further emphasises by the words frugal and lowly, both implying simplicity. Frugal, if someone's frugal, it means they're very careful with money, and lowly means just the frugal meal, the lowly cot. So it'll be the sort of very, very basic meal and just a lowly cot, just a small bed on the floor, nothing fancy. More than wealth signifies the importance of sentimentality to the speaker. Again, we are seeing words with connotations of finances being applied to sentimental actions. So these two really are at, they've got the wires crossed, haven't they? He thinks he needs to go off and make money to make her happy when she's perfectly happy with the riches that he brings to her with his love. They're misunderstanding each other on some level, and she's upset about that. Right, dangerous obviously means, while he, the dangerous ocean braves, he's out on the sea, he might never come back. And as I think I said earlier, these men went off for years, literally years, like a decade or something, and quite often didn't come back. And there was no way of knowing what had happened when they were coming back, or even if they were coming back, because there was no communication. She sees it as pointless. Tears but vainly flow suggests that she is helpless and can't do anything about the situation. The metaphor pour my woe, woe is just sadness. She's suggesting that she's pouring her sadness into the faithless waves into the sea. So that's a metaphor, suggests a constant feeling of misery. Right, faithless waves don't discriminate. Obviously religion was everybody believed in God back then, and his power to sort of protect you against things. But nature was also was seen as something that did its own thing, really, wasn't driven by religion. So waves don't discriminate. That they could easily wash her lover away. So why should she put her faith in something she cannot control? The imagery of the deep and dark ocean suggests she is fearing for her lover's safety. Soft the billows roll implies so billows and roll and soft. Serenity just means calm and peaceful, implies a serenity of the sea, but the water is deep and holds unknown terrors. Anything could happen. Basically anything could happen at sea. Her lover is off at sea, and anything could happen out there. She probably won't ever see him again. The final stanza may create images of a shipwreck on the dangerous ocean, but the speaker realises that actually the storm is within her. Right, so she's all very overwrought about this, very overexcited. This powerful metaphor, so she's connecting the storm at sea with the storm inside her, creates an angry tone which emphasises the speaker's newfound bitterness of being left in favour of gaining riches and adventure. So listen, Year 10, copy those all into your books. If you want to ask me any questions, send me the email. My email is going to be on class charts. Make sure you copy all of that into your books, and then on to the next slide. Right, as well as annotating each poem we read this term, we're going to make sure to capture the key ideas in our exercise books. So we need to think about what are the main ideas of these poems. What you choose to record will be different for each of you. It'll be similar, but slightly different. I mean, your personal reaction to these poems is important, because you should be choosing the ideas that you would feel confident writing about in an exam situation. What you should capture at this stage may later go on to a flashcard you use for revising this poem. Right, here we are. Make sure that your notes on this poem include reference to the speaker and their feelings and their perspective. That simply means we've already talked about this, so you can just rewrite this again. The speaker is this woman whose lover has gone off to sea. She feels very loving towards him, but also angry and frustrated. and her perspective is, which is simply the way that she's looking at it, is that she wishes he hadn't gone. I mean, she thought that he was brilliant as he was and he didn't need any money. So you need 3 quotations that support that. You've got to put them into your book. So 3 quotes that support the speaker and their feelings and their perspective. You want some literary terminology. Those are the sorts of things that we've been talking about: end stopped lines, question marks, and so on. And points you could make about both language and structure of the poem. You need to consider the key themes of the poem. You can choose from this list or choose your own. Choose from this list: loss, pain, desire, longing, nature, distance, isolation, confrontation, reflection, recovery, time and change. This poem, you need to be thinking about loss, pain and desire. Right, those are the 3 things. Those are the 3 main themes of this poem: loss, pain and desire. Now you're going to spend the last 5 minutes of the lesson making sure that you know the quotations you've chosen really well. Learn this in, I know you're good at learning quotes because we've done it with the other text, so there's ways of doing it there, but I know you know how to do it. So put them onto flashcards that have the name of the poem on them. Put them into your revision folders that I gave you before we went, and well done. We've got to the end of our first poetry lesson, and I've been talking for nearly half an hour. I hope it wasn't too overwhelming, but I guess it probably was, you know, because the first time we've looked at a poem in this type of detail. But as I've always said to you, and as you must have enough faith in me to know by now, if you just keep at it, things become clear. So just do what I've asked you, and it will become clearer how it is that we do this. Make sure you've annotated it as I've told you to do, asked you to do rather, and you know, by the time you get to poem 15, you'll be enjoying this, I guarantee it. Okay, all right, well done Year 10, and I will speak to you tomorrow. As ever, if you have any questions or anything you want to talk to me about, just drop me an email.